My name is Kristen Northrup, and I am the head of technical services at the State Library. But where I started was with state documents, and so I'm still very fond of them. We have about 95,000 different titles of state documents that are stored here at the library. They are also all around the state. There are copies at the state archives next door, and a really important distinction between us and the state archives is you can check our copies out. We will mail them to you. You can photocopy them, the whole 9 yards. So the other really important thing I want to mention about this specific subject matter is, although we're going to go through a bunch of resources very quickly, you don't need to take notes because we will be sending you a list of everything that we talk about. But also, we have reference librarians who don't get nearly as many reference questions as they would like. It does make them sad. I'm not throwing them under the bus here. So feel free, if you have a student who wants to contact us or you want to contact us, just send us the subject you're interested in and we can even do the searching for you. And although we're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, in terms of somebody live answering the phone, and we do have an 800 number, we will take email at any time, and then somebody can type up all the answers, suggest some materials, and send it back. Again, we will do that with the teacher, the librarian, the student, anybody who contacts us, and all that information is on our website. So we used to, about 10 years ago, we received about 250 different titles of state documents every month. And we received 8 copies of each of those. So it was a lot of paper. Now we get about 90 per month. And that's because although the state agencies are still putting out just as much stuff, most of it's only online, which actually is better for everybody because anybody around the state can access it right away. They don't have to wait for it to come in the mail. And it also tends to stay up longer than somebody would keep copies in their desk. So it's helped to make the information just a little more accessible to the public. I probably have an hour's worth of stuff here, so I'm just going to whip through it fairly quickly to give you a taste of what's out there. But again, we're going to post a whole list of everything. So the briefest thing is North Dakota textbooks. All those studies that you do for 4th and 8th grade especially, we do have copies here. So if somebody loses theirs and needs one temporarily, they obviously can't keep it. But, or a page has gotten torn out, but you don't want to buy a whole new one, that sort of thing, we'll send it to you. We also, the Habitats of North Dakota set, there are a bunch of these we have. And anybody can check those out, of course. They don't have to wait for 4th grade or 5th grade. So, and then the North Dakota Studies books, the Geology and Energy and a bunch of others. Frontier Era, we have all of these. We will not check out the teacher's guides, though. We have an archival copy, but one thing the North Dakota Studies people requested is that we don't let people check out the answers. So that's one thing. It's been tried. I have these sort of divided by topic, sort of from smallest amount to largest, to make sure we get through them all. The Water Commission does a lot of good stuff for studying science. This one is about too much, too little. It's about droughts and floods in the state, and it's got lots of nifty color photos and maps. We've got facts about fracking, very hot topic, and water use. That's written, again, just on a really basic level. That's good for adults, too. Reference Guide to North Dakota Waters. This covers a little bit of everything: groundwater, floods, droughts, Missouri River Basin, Devil's Lake. Here's a little today's Missouri River, a North Dakota perspective. So it's how we make use of the river, how we make money from it, how we grow things with it. A lot to do with our relationship with the feds, especially like the Army Corps of Engineers. which reminds me, we do also collect federal documents here. And of course, there are lots of kid-friendly Fed docs. We're not covering that today, but I was going to do an NDLA presentation with the librarians at UND and NDSU about that. And that had to be put off, but we might be able to make a webinar instead. Moving on, we've got a couple of cool things from the Aeronautics Commission, Flight Plan to Aviation in North Dakota. It's a career guide and how airplanes work and the main runways, the main types of aircraft you might see in North Dakota. And in some cases, of course, if you want your own copy of these, you can contact the agencies and they will just send them to you. But our website is, or again, our reference staff is sort of a one-stop shopping to see what's out there. Not all the agencies' websites are the easiest to search. And this is their other kids guide. It's called Imagine Being a Pilot. And again, it's how to make a paper airplane. It's got the Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Foxtrot alphabet, and some fun things like that. We do have one guide for kids from the state Supreme Court on the North Dakota court system. And of course, probably some agencies send these things out to some schools, but it's hard to know which schools get what and how frequently. So this just talks about the state Supreme Court, district, municipal, and then there are event activities in the back, a couple pages worth. North Dakota Finance Facts, this comes out every year. It's a little pocket guide for the legislature. And so it gives you the most basic information on the state's budget and revenue, school appropriations, that kind of thing. Nice, easy, simple statistics. Now we will move into agriculture. These will probably be the most familiar because I know they're the State Wheat Commission. We've got the Summer Vacation with Sammy Spaghetti and Becky Bread, which is a coloring book and activity stories on wheat. North Dakota Ag Mag. I know some of you get this. I don't know who exactly, but we have all the pack issues. We have all the teachers' guides. And something else we have on our website is an index. So it tells you if you want specifically the most recent one on soil and water conservation, it tells you which issue that was and so forth, rather than just digging through a bunch of back issues. And then we've also got the Story of Wheat for Kids, which is written for grades 3 through 5. And this is when they update every 2 or 3 years. And we keep all the older ones. We have some things that are more like social studies, as much for families as for the kids. They can get into home ec, but also just as information. Food-wise is a really nifty nutrition newsletter that comes from the Extension Service. It comes out every month, and there's always a recipe, fajitas in this case, and information on saving money on your groceries and eating more healthily. And most of the things are simple enough, like for kids who make their own snacks after school or maybe make their own lunches. The health department puts out activity information every so often. This is a book on West Nile virus, and it's full of connect the dots and quizzes and fun information like that. And then, of course, you can always photocopy them. A lot of these are also on our website, so you can just download, like print the one page you want. Here's an immunization one, same idea, lots of activities. Department of Transportation does a lot, traffic safety, and 2 different age group activity books on seatbelts and car seats. And then we also have the Parent's Guide to Supervised Driving. So if somebody doesn't know about that, it can be a handy thing just to have like in the guidance counselor's office so people know it exists. We also have a family sciences department at the Extension Service, and so they do put out some really useful talking to children about serious subjects. Here's talking to children about sexual abuse, suicide, divorce. Sometimes, again, the topic might come up with an individual student or situation. There's also one on war, terrorism, and they all have references. So in addition to there being just these 2 or 3 pages, then they have a list of recommended other books. The Agriculture Department puts out lots of handy stats. So if the students want to pick something, it tells them we're #1 at wheat, pulse crops, sugar beet, sunflowers. They can pick one of those, canola. It's a nice starting point for ideas. Natural history. These are fun. I have some print screens here. The Geological Survey, and again, this will be in our resources, but they have a newsletter for children called Fossils in North Dakota. It's an online newsletter, but it comes out either quarterly or monthly. And so there's all kinds of fun stuff. You just have to remember to go online and download it. But there might be a mailing list where they'll send you the new issues. We also have a timeline. We don't get a lot of maps, but here's a cool, when you're doing dinosaurs, it tracks the eras and all the fossils. About 10 years ago now, so not everybody still has it, North Dakota history, and we have all the North Dakota histories, and they're indexed, so you can do a search by subject and figure out which issues have it. But this entire particular issue is nothing but dinosaurs of North Dakota. And again, you can order it, check it out, just like everything else. We've got a bunch of geology guides. We actually have a slightly newer one than this, but it's just checked out right now. But this is a combination of fossils and petroleum. And one thing I just happened to come across and got a kick out of is this is the official North Dakota Studies Geology textbook from 1964 for elementary school students, and to see how it describes the North Dakota petroleum industry then versus now, and a lot of other aspects. It's just kind of a fun comparison. Also historical, this is 100 years of people and wildlife in North Dakota, observations and change. It was put out by Game and Fish. Some of these are pretty substantial. This is Nature of Eastern North Dakota pre-1880 history. So it's mostly the animals. Speaking of this one, again, it's old, but it cracked me up. Ants of North Dakota. And there's almost no pictures. There is this much text on ants. It's from 1963. Nobody's seen a need to update it yet. He was that thorough. Mammals of North Dakota, much more current. Again, a nice, really thick one with lots of color photos. Game, Parks and Rec. Lots of kids like outdoorsy stuff. This one is specific to Bismarck Conservation and Outdoor Skills area, but it's got a lot of outdoor activity suggestions and fun paper activities too. But things you can do on any kind of nature trail, interpretive sites, that's the word. River areas, native grasses, and there are informational quizzes they can take while they're doing their nature walk. Just a couple things to mention that Game and Fish does. They have, this is just taken from their website again, an outdoor podcast, video podcast, whatever you would call that, of outdoorsy things, which can be fun to show in the classroom. And they also have educator workshops. I don't know how commonly known that is, but they teach teachers how to archery in the schools, habitats of North Dakota, birds, visual arts approach to teaching life sciences. So sadly, this wild outdoor world, which is like North Dakota Outdoors for Kids, was discontinued about 10 years ago, but we have all the back issues, and actually it's still perfectly good. I mean, we don't know anything all that different about beavers, for example, especially on an elementary school level. So for information and activities and history, it's still quite good for like free reading. We do have all back issues of North Dakota Outdoors going back to like the 1930s. Some kids prefer magazines to books. Roscoe's activity books, these are Game and Fish, Parks and Rec, but 3 different age levels of, again, just outdoorsy things they can do and learn and see. Also, magazines for reluctant readers. The North Dakota National Guard does a really nice magazine where they, and you can, check out 6 issues or whatever and have them lying around. It just talks about the things they're doing, their projects, a big focus on like when they visit other countries. It's really slick. They put a lot of work into that. 4-H, we get everything 4-H does, and some of their stuff is just general information for their kids. Like they have all these baking guides, so sort of home ec type. It's really just recipes and how to cook, as opposed to, some of their stuff is judging in contests, but the cooking is for anybody. Here's beginning sewing skills, like making simple quilts and pillowcases. And then they have all these clover bud activity sheets. There's like 15 of them here on like nutrition and nature and bugs and construction. And they're just all kinds of fun, simple, like 1-hour projects to do with a group of kids. Now we're going to get into the audiovisual, which is always exciting. We have some CDs, quite a few. This is called The Elders Speak. So it's traditional storytellers. This is another one. We have several of those, and then we also have Native American music. Keith Bear, we have a few by him. And then this one, North Dakota Remembers World War II, is an oral history CD. So it's North Dakota veterans of World War II being interviewed and talking about their experiences. So for DVDs, we don't have a lot yet. This was put out by the National Guard, and it's their footage of helping with the floods in 2011. So it's pretty exciting. Here's one on water and the importance of water in North Dakota, and that was put out by Prairie Public and the Energy Center at NDSU, UND. Department of Transportation did a little, just the history of the department and roads in North Dakota and trains. Here's one on the Mandan Indians, 77 minutes long. And a history of the state fair, which can be really fun because all kids love the state fair. Then we have an amazing number of VHS, which I know some of you still have VCR, so I will mention it. North Dakota Outdoors used to be a Game and Fish Department television program. We have all of the old videotapes. There are about 30 of them. Lewis and Clark, Plants and Animals from the Lewis and Clark Expedition. It's a documentary put out by Parks and Rec, so it's specific to the North Dakota portion of their trip. And some of these we're going to be working on getting digitized, either onto DVD or even up on our YouTube site. We had a traveling exhibit back in 1994 of North Dakota authors, sponsored by the Center of the Book. So people like Louise Erdrich, Louis L'Amour, Lewis and Clark, actually, Eric Severin. So we have about 8 tapes of presentations on them. We have a nifty 3-volume set called Flickertail Flashback, and what it is there was a Norwegian named Fridtjof Holmboe who came to North Dakota in like 1902 with one of the earliest video cameras and went around taking footage as a way of advertising his business. And they restored them and broadcast them in the 70s, and so we have those. So although the tapes are from the 70s, the footage is from the 1902, 1905, something like that. Conversations in North Dakota History. This was a 19-part Historical Society presentation from 1987. So they talked to a lot of North Dakota residents, each about a specific incident in history. In most cases, it was historians, but sometimes it was people who actually witnessed it. There's like public building in the New Deal era, 40 miles a day on beans and hay, Missouri River steamboating, William Langer and the political crisis of 1934, and each one has its own tape. And then finally, there was a program called Visions from the Past, and this was part of the centennial. And they have reenactors, people portraying historical figures in North Dakota, like William Canfield, Theodore Roosevelt, Medora. Our final category is history, going back to books. Scattered Village. This is, there's one for 4th graders, one for 8th graders. These are actual formal lesson plans. There's even a DVD in the back or a CD-ROM for some Mandan Village excavation, and it goes into great detail with that. We also have some, these are not as old as they look, they've just been really abused. History of different tribes around the state. Prairie Mosaic is ethnic atlas, so it talks about all the different immigrant groups and where they came from and how they adjusted. And it's got lots of pictures and stuff. That's not a page, lots of pictures, but there are some. Traveler's Companion to North Dakota State Historic Sites. It goes into, because it's a big book, they take the time to go into quite a bit of detail about the history of the different sites. So if somebody's doing a research report, it actually has quite a bit of information. Challenge of the Prairie. This is a collection of like anecdotes and interviews with early settlers on just how difficult life was. Centennial Anthology of North Dakota History, very big book. This is basically just a greatest hits from the magazine North Dakota History, so it can be good for browsing. One thing, the fact this one's heavy reminds me, we will mail our material to anybody around the state if they have a state library card. So if you're using the school's library card, it'll go to the school. Any student can sign up for a card, whether they have a public library card or not. But we cover the postage to get it to you. You have to cover the postage, or the student has to cover the postage to get it back to us. Unless, of course, you're on a courier route. And then where history happens, the cover's a little cheesy at this point, it's a little dated, but the inside is spectacular. It's all these coloring sheets of different historical things in the state, and with informative captions. And almost all of these are also available sometimes on the Historical Society's website, but we have copies here if it's easier to just print them out and photocopy them. Chateau, Medoras. We have all the blue books, of course. One thing that's going back to the 20s, I want to say. We do have the Centennial one, which not everybody still has, so that's one you can check out if your school doesn't anymore. And speaking of the Centennial Blue Book, at the time they created this guide for teachers, Teacher's Guide and Activity Workbook. So it's all kinds of questions and activities and the answers of things related to the Blue Book. And 90% of them are still applicable because it's stuff related to North Dakota history. So you can either use it with the Centennial Blue Book or even with the current one. I found a kid's book, an actual honest to goodness kid's book that was in the state documents section. I did not know it was there. It's about a Norwegian immigrant family during the Great Depression in North Dakota. The main character is an 11-year-old girl. It was put out by NDSU's Institute for Regional Studies. Is how it ended up here. Something else kind of unusual, this would be on a high school level, is this is a play. It's the complete script with music on the trial of Louis Riel. And it's even got photographs of one of the initial productions. It was done at NDSU again in 1965. But a lot of the dialogue is actually historical information from the real trial. So that can be a good class reading activity. And then a few history books, again, for the older kids. You have been kind enough to assist me is about a North Dakota resident who helped get a bunch of Jews out of Europe during World War II. Important Voices, North Dakota's women elected state officials share their stories. This is, it's even more clear on the back, various women who've held elected office in North Dakota being interviewed. So that is a great starting point for a biography project. Bitter Harvest, very popular. It's about Gordon Call, but it's more objective than a lot of the books out there, of course. And then Land in Her Own Name, which is a history of women homesteaders, especially single women homesteaders in North Dakota. So that's another fun one for older kids. And is that enough? There's probably more I didn't find, but hopefully that's a good starting point. And like I said, we will have all of this stuff written up and annotated and posted to the website. And we love questions and requests and subject ideas. Do we have any questions? While we're hanging out, I did grab a few things just for amusement. This is regulations, look how tiny it is, governing the certification of teachers issued by the North Dakota Board of Education in 1916. You had to be 18 years old and you had to pass a couple tests, is the short answer to be a teacher. This is the catalog of the public school library. These are books that the state superintendent of public instruction recommends all public school libraries own, and it's published in 1892. We have newer ones, but I grabbed the oldest of each. And it looks a lot like stuff today. There are all these different series, and it gives you both the price, the list price and the discount for teachers. We have educational laws going back to 1913. If you want to see how things have changed. And then the general school laws go back to 1890, but you can still check them out. They're crumbling, but you can take them home. Price list for textbooks going back to 1909. They averaged about 20 cents. This is my favorite area, course of study for state schools. This one is to 1891, and it's broken out by grade, what kindergartners need to learn, etc. In addition to recess in the morning, they had 5 minutes for marching and singing. And then special day programs. This wasn't as exciting as I was hoping. 1909. There weren't very many school holidays. There was Lincoln's birthday, Washington's birthday, Arbor Day and Bird Day, Memorial Day, Flag Day. You'd think they'd be out of school by then. Thanksgiving Day and Christmas. And what most of this actually is activities and lots of poems that you can read on those days. So, but that's some of our oldest stuff. But I hope this is helpful.